Hello parents and students, good afternoon. This is Reading Fluency for week 14, and this is the first video. I wasn't sure how to determine your child's goals right here, so I'm going to go over that a little bit for this week 14. When your child reads to you and you're keeping track of them using a timer like this or something on your phone for a minute, you're going to notice that their word per minute is going to increase each time they read. Sometimes it'll go down a little bit. They'll lose motivation, or they just aren't reading that well that day. But from these numbers that are over here, I want you to kind of pick a goal for your child each week. Now, I've had some examples of students doing really well, starting out with under 100 and then ending over 100. So let's say your child's having difficulty reading. This goal would start out to be like maybe 100. And then after they've done that goal for a couple of weeks with different passages, you want to make it 120, because this is what we're trying to reach. We're trying to reach 120 to 140 words per minute. If your child's reading too fast, they can slow down a little bit. You'll be surprised, because some children read fast and enjoy reading fast, and that's okay. But when reading aloud, if they make a lot of mistakes, then they're reading way too fast. So this is reading without errors. And that feels like a little bit of pressure to read without errors. I make mistakes when I read these passages. But that's the practice anyway. And once they can read the passage, then we can start identifying some areas in the passage that they should understand in fourth grade, like genre and craft and structure and introduction, the body, conclusion, things like that. And then be able to answer some comprehension questions about the passage itself. So it's a lot of work. This passage for week 14 is kind of easy. It has some names in it. So Franklin D. Roosevelt and Lyndon B. Johnson. Names are always the hardest words to pronounce because they're in foreign language. Their people's names come from their backgrounds. So if I look at an Italian name, I might have a hard time pronouncing it because it's in Italian. So our heritage is identified by our names. So that's what makes names so difficult. And the names of countries are difficult. I'm going to start just kind of reviewing a little bit. I'm going to read through this passage, the first read. I'm going to underline some words that I think are important. And then I'm going to read for 1 minute. I'm going to bracket where I left off that 1 minute and continue reading. Remember, we're reading from the top to the bottom every single time. Unless your child's having difficulty with some of the words that are in here or the sentences, and they're making a lot of mistakes, then we want to break this down into sections that are a little bit easier for them to read. So here's my first read. I'm not doing anything but getting through the passage and underlining words that I might have difficulty with. Again, if you have if it's really difficult, then just break it down into maybe the first passage or paragraph looks pretty good. The second paragraph looks pretty good. The conclusion down here looks pretty easy. Divide it up into paragraphs and just take one paragraph at a time. You don't have to read it particularly in any particular order, just for the reading portion of the passage. So let's go ahead and get started. It is a big job being the President of the United States. Presidents manage things in our own country. Plus, they play a part in what is going on all over the world. In our country, the president oversees many things. What kind of things? There is our money system. There are our courts, the army, and government programs. There are schools and parks. There are energy and transportation. The president makes sure that the government is doing well with all these jobs and more. What does the president do for the world? The president's job is to help the United States get along with other countries and help other countries when they need it. Franklin D. Roosevelt, so this is going to be a difficult word to pronounce. It's capitalized. This is a name of a president. Was our president from 1933 to 1945. He helped our country get through the Great Depression. Many people had lost their jobs and did not have enough money. As president, he began the New Deal program to make new jobs. In the world, he was in charge of our soldiers who fought in World War II. Lyndon B. Johnson was another president from 1963 to 1969. There were big fights about civil rights in our country. He helped African Americans gain equal rights. He also sent soldiers across the world to help with the Vietnam War. Now, some of you may have trouble with this. You've heard of it, but some of you may have trouble with it just looking at it as a word, and it's capitalized. So this is a country in Asia, and this is how they pronounce the name of their country. And let's see, I'll start at the beginning here. He also sent soldiers, this might be a difficult word too, that's how soldiers is spelled. It's an unusual spelling. Across the world to help with the Vietnam War and end the fighting. Each president has to deal with things going on in our own country and around the world. It is a mighty big job. Would you like to do it? Okay, so now I'm going to write out Franklin D. Roosevelt and my margin over here. And Lyndon B. Johnson. You know, see how he puts a Y in here? A lot of Navajo names have Y's in it. One of the presidents had a Y in his name. Soldier. I misspelled this word quite a bit because soldiers, sold, you look at it this way, solders, is how it looks like it's spelled, soldiers, but it has like a G sound, soldiers, this D-I-E-R has like a G sound, which is unusual. And then Vietnam. I've seen this spelled as two separate words. V, this I, has an E sound, and this E has a short E sound. So that's what makes this word a little bit unusual. Viet, and this looks like Nam. Some people have pronounced it Vietnam. Vietnam is the correct pronunciation, I believe. All right, now I'm going to read for 1 minute. I'll tell you what, before we start that, let's number our paragraphs. And the first paragraph is pretty easy. So if you're having difficulty, the first, third, and sixth, these two paragraphs that have the names on them are a little bit more difficult. So, but I'm going to read all the way through. And again, 120 to 140 words a minute is not very difficult. It's not very fast. Let's see how well I do without errors. It's a big job being the President of the United States. Presidents manage things in our own country. Plus, they play a part in what is going on all over the world. Oh, that didn't work. Let's try this again. It's a big job being the President of the United States. Presidents manage things in our own country. Plus, they play a part in what is going on all over the world. In our country, the president oversees many things. What kind of things? There is our money system. There are the courts, the army, and the government programs. There are schools and parks. There are energy and transportation. The president makes sure that the government is doing well with all these jobs and more. What does the president do for the world? The president's job is to help the United States get along with other countries and help other countries when they need it. Franklin D. Roosevelt was our president from 1933 to 1945. He helped our country get through the Great Depression. Many people had their, I stopped right here. I'm going to continue reading. Jobs and did not have enough money. As president, he began the New Deal program to make new jobs. In the world, he was in charge of our soldiers who fought in the war. That's here too. Lyndon B. Johnson was president from 1963 to 1969. There were big fights about civil rights in our country. He helped African Americans gain equal rights. He also sent soldiers across the world to help with the Vietnam War and end the fighting. Each president has to deal with things going on in our own country and around the world. It is a mighty big job. Would you like to do it? So I ended here in paragraph 4. So that was 138 where had is, right at the end of the sentence, 138, 139, 140. So this was 140 words per minute. And I wasn't reading very fast, and that's about how long it takes. So here, my goal would probably be 140 plus. In other words, I could read a little bit faster, I could read a little bit slower, down to at least 120. But this is kind of where my reading pace is at, and that's what we're doing with our fluency reading the first time we read. Now, the date today is the 8th, so this is a little bit before you get this package. And the time is 8:23 a.m. It's in the morning. I'm going to make my signature on here. And I'm going to put 140 words per minute. There are 12 places for you to do this. If you're reading 140 words a minute, maybe you do this once a day. If you're reading 100 or less, you should be practicing. You should be filling this up. You should be reading it at least 2 times a day, maybe even 3. Okay, this is our weekly practice. Continue reading. I hope you keep on improving throughout the year. And there'll be some questions that I'll be asking about this, and that'll be in the next video.